Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL. Still to come on the show this morning, Jonah Goldberg will join us in the 8 o'clock hour from National Review. Jim Engel, Chief Washington Correspondent, Fox News Channel, will join us as well, getting some Social Security issues with him.
Yeah, we used to call him Jangle over at Fox.
Is there a reason why he's on Jangle?
Jim Engel. Jangle.
Oh, Jangle.
Yeah.
Just, combining the words.
Yeah.
Right, okay, I gotcha. Joe Digenova joins us now, our legal expert, former U.S. prosecutor. I've been dying to ask you about this fast and furious operation that the ATF pulled off. To me, this smells of high heaven. Essentially, they allowed these gun sales to take place in the United States, wanting to track these guns down to drug cartels and figure out who they were, but at the same time, they couldn't really go into Mexico, and there were ATF agents who were told, no, let the sales go through, even though they were very shady. What do you make of all this? Who came up with us idea number one, and did it get to Eric Holder? Do you think he okayed this?
Well, we don't know yet the answer to that last question yet, and that's what the congressional hearings are all about. Although the way the Democrats have been reacting, you would think that the holding of these hearings is a waste of Congress's time. The Democrats have a fascinating ability to not like oversight unless it's Henry Waxman or John Dingell doing it. Then if they do it, of course, it's perfection under the Constitution. This was a very, very bad law enforcement program. It was officially authorized, and if you saw the testimony by the DOJ representative, a low-level person who they sent up to testify, he said he did not know who authorized it. That is absolutely unbelievable. The department will not answer any serious questions about this unless subpoenas are issued to very senior officials. And the Republicans are doing the right thing. They're letting the story work its way through the system. Then they'll start getting rough. And they'll do that after the debt ceiling is dealt with.
Is this something that only Congress can look into, or does this scream of a special prosecutor, or is there no special prosecutor needed unless the White House is involved? How does that work? I don't know. To me, Joe, this seems like a pretty big deal.
No, it's a very serious thing because you've had U.S. law enforcement people killed by the weapons that were actually let go through for the sale. This was not handled properly. It was not supervised. And it was a dumb idea to begin with. This is an entirely different thing than letting a bale of marijuana go through so you can trace it to that. A bale of marijuana doesn't shoot someone. Mm-hmm. A weapon is used, and it's being used by the cartels down in Mexico. I mean, sending weapons into Mexico to see whose hands they got into, which is almost an impossibility to begin with until after someone has been killed, is an insane idea. What it does show you is that when government agencies get as big as they are unmanageable, and most importantly, when things go wrong, no one is ever accountable and no one is ever fired.
Hey, Joe, there's been a lot of reporting about over the weekend about what the president did or didn't do. He sort of ignored the advice of some of his key legal advisors when it came to the War Powers Resolution and whether they had to go to Congress and sort of ask for their blessing on it. He opposed the Pentagon General Counsel and the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. What do you make of all that?
Well, what you make of it is what the House of Representatives will probably do is they will subpoena those legal opinions, and then there will be a constitutional battle over whether or not those documents that went to the president are subject to executive privilege. The president is...
And that will delay a real discussion of the matter of whether or not the War Powers Resolution was...
Let me just tell you something. Barack Obama has become what William Fulbright used to call the arrogance of power. He, as a senator, would have gone ballistic over these memos not being made public, or the president. If George Bush had done this, there would have been an impeachment resolution. The Republicans are not going to do an impeachment resolution of Obama, and the mainstream media is doing everything it can to ignore the fact that he is now acting illegally and unconstitutionally. This is quite a remarkable example of arrogance by the President of the United States, and for someone who claims to be a so-called constitutional scholar, which he is not. By the way, let's see his law school records. Still haven't seen those yet, have we? But we've got 24,000 emails from Sarah Palin. Really important stuff up there in Alaska.
Well, I'm going to take it off the heavy stuff for a second and ask you about this funny story we had earlier about a high school yearbook getting pulled because of alleged child pornography, because there's apparently a picture of some high school kids engaged in some sort of sexually
Getting
explicit...
a little frisky.
Could you really be charged with a felony as they're warning kids for having this yearbook?
No. And in fact, no prosecutor would ever charge such a thing. What this is an example of is because the yearbook company would ultimately be civilly responsible if they were sued. There's no way a prosecutor would ever charge the yearbook company. This is the triumph of litigation over common sense. There's no way this would be charged as a crime.
Speaking of which, one of your favorite topics is, of course, Montgomery County.
You know, they never raise their voices; they just raise your taxes.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you, Joe.
I knew there was a line in there
They
somewhere.
never fill the potholes. You know, it's really fascinating. They have all this money to raise pensions, but they can't fill a pothole in Montgomery.
He's off.
Well, they could shut down a lemonade stand as well.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
All right, so this lemonade stand that was set up on private property near the U.S. Open, these kids were, selling lemonade. Apparently, it was a pretty elaborate lemonade
For
stand.
charity.
It was for charity, and they shut it down because, well, I guess apparently the people around the neighborhood, they were concerned about some residents selling their land or selling, property at a park or, setting up, bootleg stands for merchandise. I don't know if the U.S. Open was concerned about it or not, but they shut them down.
Yes.
At the end of the day, they were allowed to reopen, but they couldn't do it on the property. They had to move it 20 feet down the road.
Yeah, well, this is, again, Montgomery County is really, this is the triumph of government over sanity. They cradle to grave Montgomery County, which has the greatest pension system and the greatest disability pension system and the highest real estate taxes. They have all these funny little people in uniforms who go around and fine people for regulatory violations. That's what Montgomery County exists for, is to irritate taxpayers. That's what they do for a living. This was insanity. These kids are trying to raise money. My wife, Victoria Sensing, said, "You know what? If the person had been properly trained, who was the regulatory official, he should have said, now here's what we're going to do. You guys need a permit for this. So on Monday, you guys are going to come down, or whenever they first saw them on Thursday, we'll take you and get you a permit. It only cost you $5, and we'll show you how to do it." It could have been a civics lesson. Instead, It ends up being these jack-booted thugs from Montgomery County on the throat, as Robert used to say, Robert Gibbs. Their foot on the throat of these kids trying to raise money for charity.
Right.
It is amazing what Montgomery County can do when it puts this brilliant brain to work. By the way, let me just say this. Just remember, Montgomery County is fully owned subsidiary of the Democratic Party.
Yes, it is.
Not a single Republican on the county council. The county executive is a Democrat. The debt there belongs to the Democrat. The deficits belong to the Democrats. The thugs are Democrats.
Your tax dollars at work.
All right, one last question. I don't have a lot of time on this, but Dan Snyder in the lawsuit against the City Paper. The City Paper apparently filed for a dismissal.
Yes.
And
Fascinating use of a new law. This District of Columbia just enacted a statute called anti-SLAPP. And what it is it's designed to get lawsuits like Snyder's thrown out in the initial stages and prevent very expensive discovery. SLAPP means strategic lawsuits against public participation. These are generally lawsuits filed by big companies or big people to shut up critics on the other side. Let's say somebody says your washing machine doesn't work well. The company will then sue you for defamation. These laws were enacted to allow people who are sued by the companies or by big shots like Snyder to get the lawsuit thrown out early without any expensive discovery. The City Paper filed a motion like this against Snyder and quoted his own people's statements in public, including the lawyer who filed the lawsuit, which says that one of the reasons they filed the lawsuit was to silence their critics. I predict that this motion will be granted and that the Snyder lawsuit will be thrown out by the Superior Court judge.
all right, good stuff. Thank you, as always, Joe. We appreciate